Hello, friends. Welcome to The Way Home, Crossnore Communities for Children's Facebook Live show, as well as our podcast. We are several weeks into January and are super excited that you guys have joined us this year. I hope everybody's year is off to a great start. My name is Holly Kessler, and I'm the Senior Director of Community Relations at Crossnore. We are here on Facebook Live every Tuesday afternoon, and we talk with one or two of our staff members or maybe a community partner about the work that we do, the child welfare system, different ways that we're engaging with our community. And so if you miss our live show, you can always rewatch on Facebook or catch the show on our YouTube channel. And the podcast comes out on Fridays on our blog, which you can find at crossnore.org. So there are plenty of ways to watch our show each week and engage with us. And we hope that you will do that. Today, our guest is Angela Squire. Angela serves as Crossnore's Senior Director of Prevention Services, and she's here today to tell us exactly what that means. So join me in welcoming Angela to the show today. Hello, Angela.
Hi, Holly.
How are you?
I am doing well this morning. How about you?
Doing great. So glad to see you here. I'm really glad that you're here today. And I thought maybe you could start out by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do at Crossnore. And then I know you have a very busy life, so anything else you want to share about your life would be great.
Sure. So I have been with Crossnore now going on 13 years.
Wow.
My first 5 years was in our residential-based programs, and the next 5 years our clinical department. And in February of 2021, I transitioned to really spearhead a new prevention division at Crossnore. In addition to the work at Crossnore, I'm also a licensed foster parent and a mom of 6, not including 3 dogs too. So definitely very busy, both at work and in my personal life.
Well, very busy. You and I are friends also away from work and friends on social media. And I see all the stuff that you do with all those kids. Y'all are really busy.
Yes, we try to keep them active and make as many memories as we can.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is really awesome. And bless you guys for being foster parents with kids of your own, but also making space for a kid that needs a home. And so we appreciate you doing that personally as well as professionally. So thank you for all you do, Angela. Well, remind us and our listeners today about the mission of Crossnore.
Yeah, our mission at Crossnore is to create healthy futures for children and families by providing a Christian sanctuary of hope and healing. And one of the things I just want to highlight in our prevention work is that and families part. I think we've been known for a long time about doing, great work with children and teens, but we really want to be highlighting some of it new work and some of it kind of re-envisioned work with helping families experience hope and healing as well.
Yeah, I think that is a really great point because so much of the new program work that we are doing does incorporate families. And that is super, super important. I think especially in what you do, because for so many years, we sort of have worked in the foster care space. And so working with children and maybe some families, who are already involved in child welfare services, whose children have already been removed from the home. Right. And so tell us about prevention services. How does that tie into, you said a little bit about it, but just say a bit more about how does working upstream in a prevention space tie into that mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So prevention is kind of a buzzword that's out there and it can be used for so many different things. But when we talk about prevention services, we're really talking about preventing children from either entering the foster care system or preventing them from being re-removed and placed back in the foster care system. So way back in 2018, the federal government passed the Family First Preservation Services Act. And what that really did was, as a nation, say that we want to prioritize funding and keeping kids with their families, having these services to prevent kids from going into foster care instead of just funding foster care and foster-based programs. So there's an effort to kind of redirect funding accordingly. And we at Crossnore knew that this was coming down the pipe, and also it aligned with the mission that we had developed for helping both children and families. So we decided to create programs that would really focus on reducing risk factors and helping build supports and resources to keep kids with their families as often as possible.
Super, super interesting work that you guys do. So let's jump into that and talk about some of the specific programs that you have been so instrumental in developing here at Crossnore. So tell us about those specific services that we offer in this prevention space.
Yeah, so we are currently in the middle of building a continuum of services. And one of the things that I think is important to remember is from a national statistics standpoint, 84% of children in foster care are there as a result of neglect. So it's not as a result of physical abuse necessarily. Sometimes it can be severe neglect, and we know that that impacts children as well. But sometimes that neglect is really as a result of families not having resources or not having tools or not having supports to be able to parent as effectively as they could. So our programs are really designed to help give parents as well as children the tools needed to keep the family together. So we have kind of a high risk, medium risk, and then we're going to be building a low risk program to help with that. Our high risk program is called Home Builders, and you can find out more about that at our website. But Home Builders is the oldest evidence-based model for intensive family preservation. And what that means is these are the kids that are at highest risk of being placed in the child welfare system and foster care. And our goal is, instead of removing the child from the home, we actually put a practitioner, one of our staff, in the home as often as possible with the family to help them build skills and supports to be able to stay together. So that program, we work in the home about 10 hours a week for 4 to 6 weeks with families, really facing a broad range of challenges. And sometimes, it might be related to school attendance and truancy. That was one of the cases that we worked effectively with. It was a mom that had gotten her children back after being in foster care for a period, and she had 6 children. It was hard to get them up and ready for school in the morning and get them all off. These were all young children, by the way. So instead of taking the kids out and saying, "Hey, mom, you can't do this," we had a staff member come in and work with mom. She was there at 7 o'clock in the morning. What does your morning routine look like? What are the barriers that the kids aren't able to get on the bus on time? And she noticed the kids were overtired in the morning. So she came at bedtime and was helping. What's the nighttime routine look like? And really worked with that family to build a routine that was going to work for them. That they could stay with mom. We've had, other cases where the parents just needed support in getting their own treatment and help. And we're there to help them with that. Transportation, help with referrals. There was another case that we had where a child, a young teenager, was in foster care because of a lack of supervision. He was getting into trouble because mom was working multiple jobs trying to take care of her family. So as he transitioned back home, we really worked closely with mom and her extended supports to build a supervision plan. We knew mom had to work, but how can we tap into other resources to make sure that he stays out of trouble? He's involved in positive activities. He's got other family and friends helping support and keep him on track. Those are the types of things that program works with, providing concrete resources like food, heating assistance, making sure that there's water and electricity in the home, some of those concrete resources, as well as building skills.
That is so amazing. And I loved what you said at the beginning about how, not that I love the statistic, but just making that distinction that 84% of kids are in foster care due to neglect.
Right.
And understanding that so many times, like a lot of times we're dealing with generational cycles.
Absolutely.
And so, I think I've even heard your practitioner say that, some of the families that y'all have worked with have even commented like, nobody taught me how to do this.
Right.
So like if nobody teaches you to, how to sort of run your household in the morning, if you've got 6 kids, or what does it mean to do an evening routine that gets everybody in the bed and gets enough sleep? Like if nobody's taught you how to do that, that's not innate, right? Like how do you know, right?
Yeah. And I can empathize with that. As a mom of 6 myself, I was like, hey, we need to support this mother as much as possible. Yeah.
Well, I was a single mom with 2 kids, and I had other resources. I had lots of friends. I had a family. I had, folks that when I had questions, I had a place to go. But I think the recognition that some of these families don't have those resources. And what are we doing beyond just taking their kids away?
Right.
Super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, and that's the goal. That is the goal of the program entirely. It's not, necessarily a therapy program, though all of our staff are trained in therapeutic models to be able to build motivation, to be able to help with thinking patterns and emotional regulation. But it's really about holistic care, care of the whole family unit. How are we going to help them get the tools emotionally, the tools physically, and really build connections with that family unit to keep them together.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So that was the high risk. And then you said that we have programs to address sort of the medium risk, and then you're looking at the low risk too. So tell us about those.
Yeah, so our next level of service is brand new, actually, this month. We used to do intensive in-home services at Crossnore, and we really decided to kind of rebuild that program with our target population in mind, that we weren't just going to work with, families in the community, but we were going to target caregivers, whole families, the ones that, are at risk of being involved in the child welfare system. And we decided to bring our intensive in-home program back, but to change the model that we were using. So in addition to, providing therapeutic services for the kids, we are also tapping on an evidence-based caregiver model to build effective parenting skills. And that starts with helping kids and parents feel attached and connected to each other, to rebuild a sense of trust and safety in the relationship. And then let's work on addressing behavior. So we decided to title that program Family Foundations. And again, it's just starting back up. We have an amazing team. They're all in training right now, and that training is pretty intensive, going to take a while for them to go through. But the whole idea is to really rebuild the family foundation prior to and in the middle of addressing behavior problems that kids might be experiencing, and supporting the parents, because we know that the parents that parent, children with difficult behaviors, they're at a high risk of burnout. So not only do we want to support, the kids in building the skills and supports, but continue building supports for their family as well.
Yeah. So that's the Family Foundations program. Yeah. And then you said you guys are looking at some lower risk options as well. What does that look like?
Yeah. One of our goals in the future, and this is going to be coming out in really the summer of this year as we're building, is some caregiver support groups. I said this back during COVID: if there was caregiver support groups out there, I would go. Sure. And I know there are some in the community, but we want to also, as we're working with families along all of the risk continuums, we want to make sure that they stay connected, and they also get an element of peer support. Right. So there's nothing better than knowing that there are other parents out there going through the same thing, making it able to enjoy parenting sometimes, hopefully most of the time. But we want to provide this caregiver support space for parents to get peer support, led by a trained facilitator, but also to get that same attachment-based model and continue to build those skills. So they'll be using the same attachment-based evidence caregiver model to build skills and supports for those caregivers who are struggling with risk of burnout and just the exhaustion of parenting and parenting stress.
Okay. All right. And does that caregiver model have a name?
Yes. So it is called Trust-Based Relational Intervention, so TBRI. And that is a model that I became familiar with as a foster parent. I wanted to know how to be the best parent I could for these children coming into our home. So myself, and then I drug my husband along too, read a book by Karen Purvis. It's called The Connected Child. It's amazing. Highly recommend.
Absolutely.
Yes, but it's really about that. The importance of developing the connection first. How do you develop the connection with your child? And part of that is with structure, discipline and structure. Kids need to know what to expect from their caregivers. It's not all the warm and fuzzies necessarily, but how do you balance 100% discipline and structure with 100% love and nurturing? And that's the parenting approach that we're taking, using this model, the TBRI model, and their evidence-based curriculum for parents.
Yes. And so you and some of your staff, myself included, are doing some training right now in the TDRI model. And I've been so impressed with it. When we first started doing the phase 1 training, I kind of wondered where you talked about that balance. It was all about connection, 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 connection. And then I kept thinking, but sometimes there are consequences to behavior. Sometimes we do have to draw lines. And so then once we got into that in the training, I could see that balance of even when we have to draw some lines, when there are some consequences, how we can do that in an attachment based way so that the child doesn't feel, like we're being punitive or that we're not there walking alongside them. We're still attached, even when there are consequences to be managed.
Yeah. And I love the approach too of really every mistake is an opportunity for learning.
Right.
And that goes for children and that goes for adults.
Yeah.
So being able to take that approach that this is not punitive. This is really about learning and growth. And in this journey of raising children, we are learning together. They're learning and we're learning. So I really love that approach, the opportunity to, redo things together, and to teach within the structure of safety. Really is the most important component of that. But I know you have my best interest at heart. I know you care about me, even when you're providing correction and you're giving me an opportunity to redo and to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. It really resonated with me because I think that here at Crossnore, it's one of the things that we've tried to do with our staff. We've tried to build really over the last 5 or 6 years is that, not every mistake has to be fatal. In an employment, situation. There might be a couple of things that would be a fatal mistake, but other mistakes are learning opportunities. Yeah. And how am I as a supervisor or how is my supervisor walking alongside me, maintaining that connection, and helping me, correct that mistake that I've made, or how am I doing that as a supervisor for my staff? And so that really resonated with me. I think I'm probably a little bit old school, and I don't know how about you, Angela, but I was sort of raised in the, kids do what they're told.
And don't ask questions, right?
And you don't ask questions, and you sit down and you be quiet till you're spoken to, right? But that may not have been the most effective way, and certainly the world's different and kids are different, and I get all of that, and so it really resonated with me, like I said, because I think we've practiced that with our staff, and now we have the opportunity to practice it not only with children that we serve, but also helping families practice it with their children in their own homes.
Right. Yes. I love that you're highlighting that all the way across the board, because that's, part of what we use even in our sanctuary model. It's how are you affecting children? How are you affecting families? How are you affecting the agency? And having that same approach of, everything is a learning opportunity, Rarely is there an instance where it is that fatal, you got to go piece. But can you just imagine, even as an employee, walking around on eggshells 24/7, that if I make a mistake, I'm going to be gone. Right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's how the kids are feeling, right?
Yeah.
That if I make a mistake, that I'm going to have this super severe consequence, or I'm going to have to leave my foster home, or I'm going to get kicked out of my group, so many things that really are not effective in creating a learning environment for kids.
Well, and think about a child who's already experienced foster care.
Right.
And now they're at home. Right. And what if I make a mistake? What if my parent makes a mistake? I'm going to end up back in foster care. Like, that must be a really pretty frightening place to live, Yeah. So I'm super hopeful for this model and how it's going to really work out in the programs and with your program staff and with the families that y'all are serving. And then even through Fostering Communities, my team using that with some of our community partners and that are also in child care caring roles, we can help them learn how to do that too. So that's going to be really exciting. Yeah. As you have talked about programs and talked about children and families, I think you've already answered this question, but I just want to make sure you didn't have anything else to say, because I'd planned to ask you, why are prevention services important? You talked about the Family First Prevention Services Act and, sort of some shifts in funding and that's quite a process and can be sort of frustrating sometimes, because we all believe in prevention, but we also at the same time have kids in care that have to be taken care of. So how do you split up the money? So anyway, what else would you say about why prevention services are so important.
Yeah, I think, if you've been in this work any length of time, you know that there's a ton of research out there just about outcomes of children in foster care. And, again, I'm a licensed foster parent. We understand that there is a need for some children to be in the foster care system, and are supportive of that. And we need more families, and we want to make sure we have safe spaces. And I think our residential based programs that we've had at Crossnore for a long time are really heads and tails above what so many other residential programs offer. We make sure kids get licenses and can have jobs and, play sports and all these things that a lot of times kids miss out on. So if you're going to do it, you do it well. And I think we do that well. But we also know that from an outcomes-based perspective, that moving towards adulthood, kids that are raised with their families, and that can be their family of origin, that can be kinship placement, but kids that are with their families have better outcomes in the future. They have better school-based outcomes. They have better legal-based outcomes. And that's part of why we want to make sure, that we are giving kids the foundation that they need. And a lot of times that is with family, whatever that family system looks like. So we're not just working with, biological parents, but we might be working with grandparents when, the children can't be with their parents safely, or we might be working with aunts and uncles, or, a family friend that is taking them in. We want to holistically help prepare people, just as you were talking about a few minutes ago. Parenting is difficult. Parenting children involved in the system is way more difficult. Yes. And, I had to have the tools. I've been doing this since 2003 in this population, and I still had to get new tools to be able to help make sure that there was success in our home, and the way we were functioning in our home with a child that had, some unique needs. So I think it's just so important for kids to have that foundation of family. Again, the research shows that if you just sit down and talk to any kid, they want their families, they need their families. And that's part of what drew me to the work, the prevention-based work. Honestly, when I first started out in therapy, I didn't really like working with parents. I just wanted to be like, get yourselves together, But especially as my children grew older, I had 4 teens at one time. As my kids grew older, and as I really started doing more of this holistic, really effective family therapy in my therapeutic practice, I realized that a lot of times parents are doing the best that they can. And they just need extra skills and supports. So that's what drew me. I saw kids bounce back and forth, in and out of foster care. I saw kids have 13, 15 placements, in a matter of a couple of years. A really young child had 9 placements in a year. And that is really what drew me into this passion for working with the caregivers. How do we help them to make them the best caregivers that they could possibly be? And then there are times where we have to say, you know what, they don't have the skills and supports to keep this child safe. And, we can't work effectively with this family, and they need something else, or the child does enter foster care.
But I think at that point we have done everything we can do to provide them support. And so if a different decision has to be made, it feels like it's being made on the basis of everything's been done that could be done. And maybe it doesn't feel quite so, I don't know, haphazard a decision-making process, but you have some actual basis for making that hard choice.
That's part of what I told my team. For a long time, we had 100% success rate, right? Every kid, every referral that we had, they were able to stay safely with their families. And then there was a case where that wasn't going to happen. And I really, highlighted with them, these are win-win outcomes. Either you help them build the skills and supports to be able to keep the family together, and that's a win, or you've helped identify that this is not a safe environment for this child, and they need to be in a different environment. And that's what we do. And that's also sometimes a win, as tragic as it may be.
Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. Well, you have a lot of programs going on and programs in the pipeline, and are so busy. What kind of needs might you have in your programs? Are you looking for staff, volunteers, any other kind of support that would be helpful to you guys?
Yeah, we definitely, because we work with so many families that are at that higher end of the need spectrum, sometimes we do need concrete supports.
Mhm.
One of the things that has been most helpful, to be honest, when we first started out, especially in our home builders program, and we're helping with transportation, we had that mom with 6 kids,
Right.
very little kids, by the way. We reached out to your folks, Holly,
Yep.
and said, "Hey, we need car seats. Hey,
Mhm.
we need car seats that can um, serve the broad range of kids because we were not prepared for that many at one time."
Right.
Um, and we had awesome donors to really on the spot. I think it was within 24 hours we had car seats available to
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
Um, we definitely, I just want to kind of highlight right now that our program, specifically home builders, is entirely donor funded.
Mhm. Mhm.
There is a push for that redirection of funding. North Carolina is still working on their plan, so there isn't any funding in North Carolina where we're able to get reimbursed for that service at this point. But it has been entirely donor funded. We've been working with families since October of 2021, and that has been entirely possible because of donors and donor support, and that has been so helpful. Even as we look forward in the work that we're doing, and some of that funding that we talked about from the federal government and the state government, that is just for prevention, keeping kids from going into foster care. That
Mhm.
doesn't include supports with kids coming out of foster care.
Right.
So we want to also continue to provide reunification support. We have, so many kids living with us with the hope of being able to go home, and we want to support that. And as we offer those reunification services to families to help them get that stable foundation as kids return home so they can stay safely home, that is going to continue to really remain donor funded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is a huge, huge piece. And of course,
Mhm.
just starting up our family foundations program and other things, there's all kinds of needs that come with that. I
Absolutely.
hope to have a van for that team. We were able to get one through donor support for our home builders team, but having a minivan, because
Mhm.
not all of our staff can transport these big families. So that's one of the needs coming down the pipe. And we do have a pretty expansive growth plan coming up in the next few years, which will
Mhm.
also include the need for more staff. We
More
have a
staff. Yeah.
pretty solid team right now. When we started in February 2021, we were a department of one. It's just
Yeah.
eight. Um, and then we've started growing, and now we're up to 8 full-time staff. So that's really awesome to grow so fast.
Yeah.
But we do have a plan to grow into, possibly the 30s if we were able to partner with the state on expanding some of these programs out west.
Yeah.
Right now, we're currently offering all of our services in Winston-Salem in the Triad area because that's where our donor support was. But we're looking at expanding out westward and growing our team really about 4 times to the size.
Yeah.
The size that it is now within about 2 years. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So folks can check out our careers page, and there'll be links in the show notes for the podcast to all of these things as well.
awesome.
And if folks are interested in offering support through fostering communities, that comes through me and my team, and we are looking at ways that we can continue to support the families that you guys are working with, Angela. So if anybody has that interest as well, they can reach out to me, and we will certainly talk about how they can get plugged in. So remind everybody, where else can they find out more information about us, Angela?
Go to our website.
There you go.
We're active on Facebook. I love the stories that get posted.
Mm-hmm.
They pull at my heartstrings just as much as anyone else's. But our website has the most up-to-date information on all of our services and programs.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everything that you and your team are doing. And thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome. Well, as I've thanked our guests for today, let me also say thanks to each of you who are watching or listening. We so appreciate the opportunity to tell you about Crossnore. And for more information, as Angela mentioned, please visit our website at crossnore.org or follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. That's it for today, but I hope you will join us again next week on The Way Home.